Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And thank you so much to Natalie Martin, who will be talking about indoor gardening today. If you have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat box and we will get to them as soon as we can. So thank you, Natalie, and take it away.
All right. So I've got I'm Natalie Martin. I'm a volunteer with the Master Gardener program through the University of Illinois Extension. And we are going to be going through some just basic stuff about the extension and Zoom itself if you are new to Zoom. So we'll take care of kind of some of those housekeeping-y things. And then I'll jump right into the program. So we'll have a couple minutes here in case people start to join and stuff like that. Like I said, I'm Natalie. I'm a volunteer with the Master Gardener program, and we do these programs right now virtually all over the county. And I work mainly in LaSalle, but we do serve Marshall, Putnam, and there's people that volunteer in Bureau as well. But every county has a extension office that would offer a Master Gardener program. A little bit of stuff about Zoom, just because it gets a little confusing. We would love if you kept your microphone and video off during this program. Like Laura said, you can add questions into the chat box. And if somehow we miss that, you can, turn on your mic and ask the question. But we just kind of to make it less confusing for other listeners and viewers, it's better to keep that mic off. If you want to extend your screen out, you want to expand it to the full screen mode and select speaker view. And that's going to, whenever I'm talking, which is a lot, I talk a lot, folks. Whenever I'm talking, it'll show me on screen if I have my video on, or it'll show my slides. Like I said, you can enter in the chat function, and then this presentation is being recorded by the library. So, that link will be available through the library website afterwards. If you're new to Zoom and you're unfamiliar with it, mine is on the top of my screen right now. Sometimes it's at the bottom. You kind of move your mouse around and it should pop up for you. You can mute using the little microphone, and you can start your video and turn off your video using this camera over here. If you're looking for the chat function, depending on where you are, it should be at the bottom of your screen in this taskbar, but it might be over here where these three little dots are. That's where mine is currently because I'm presenting. If you're looking, like I said, this is where your chat function is down here at the bottom. That's Meg. She's our coordinator. I'll talk about her in a second. And then to leave the meeting at the end, to end everything, you would click the red box over there. Just a little bit about the extension. It is the flagship outreach effort of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and we offer educational programs to residents of all 102 counties in Illinois. And there's a couple different options of programs that we offer. We have the Master Gardener program and the Master Naturalist program. Master Gardener program would be anything that you can grow in your yard. So that's from grass seed to trees and everything in between. And then we also talk about things like fertilizers, indoor plants, obviously, that's why you're here tonight, and then uses for those indoor plants. Our Master Naturalist program is providing science-based education and opportunities so that people can connect with nature. So these are going to be things that could be guided hikes. They might need maintenance programs of natural areas, identification of wild plants in people's yards, things like that. So those are our two main programs. If you are interested in becoming a volunteer with either of these programs, you can contact the Extension office. All of our websites are here on this page, but they're through the Extension, and you can see the main Master Gardener program at MG, the whole website /MG, the Master Naturalist program /MN, extension.illinois.edu/BLMP is the Bureau, LaSalle, Marshall, and Putnam Master Gardener program, which is us, or that's the Extension office, and that's us. And then if you are interested in becoming a Master Gardener or Master Naturalist yourself, you can contact Meg Overacker. She's our coordinator based in Ottawa. And her email is right here on the screen, and her phone number is right here on the screen. And she would also be your contact if you were interested in looking into other programs, or what kind of programs we're offering, or what's on the calendar for the Master Naturalist coming up. She's going to be the person to ask about any of those things. So we hope you enjoy this program. I'm going to switch my video on and stop my screen share and switch my video on so that you can see what I look like. Again, I am Natalie Martin, and I'm sorry about my light in the background. It's dark here, so I'm not used to doing programs at night, but I have been a master gardener for over a year now. And I do all sorts of programs from houseplants to, we did a program this summer about outdoor container gardening. That is available on the Reddick website or the YouTube page. My background is in fish and wildlife conservation and outdoor education. And so being a master gardener is something that I have enjoyed becoming part of. I like to show my face just because it's always helpful to kind of figure out where this weird voice is coming from and put a face with a name. I am going to start my houseplants program. And so forgive my inner workings of my computer here. It's always, nothing is seamless. But what we're going to talk about today with houseplants is kind of just some basics. And it's going to be everything from what kinds of plants would be good selections to make if you're a beginner. It's going to be a little bit about what kind of nutrients or containers you might want to choose if you are choosing houseplants, and then maybe some troubleshooting. Everything is always better if you can show a picture or describe a situation in detail. And have time to research it. So like if you have a houseplant problem today and you're like, Natalie, I got the black spots, I got the this and this, I've got these things, I can provide you some information, but it's definitely going to be better if you can call the master gardeners or submit something. There is a helpline that you can submit to. So those are always really good. I am going to throw a little cheat sheet into the chat box here. I think I can do that. Maybe not. I'll try to, I'll get it. I'll put it on our, I'll give it to Laura and we'll put it in the comments of the YouTube page. But I have a little cheat sheet about how much light you can provide, how much, or you should provide, how much water you should be watering, and a little cheat sheet about what kind of for each plant, what it should be. And also it's going to have on there some common ailments and what their leaves look like. I'm presenting you my windows. I'm sorry about that, everybody. So let's get started. The kind of benefits of plants. Why would you want to put houseplants in your house? I don't need my camera on for this. I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for you so you don't get distracted by my face. But there's a bunch of different benefits for houseplants. Number one, right off the bat, plants make you happy. Looking at living things and taking care of living things can help in a lot of ways. It can help with your attention span. It can help with your mood. And plants are known to decrease stress levels in people. There's lots of talk about how if you talk to your plants, they're happier and they grow better. There's tons of studies out there. You can just kind of Google it and it's right there. But talking to plants can make plants grow, but plants also have been known to increase people's attention span and mood just dramatically by having this living thing that is in your house and offering you kind of silent companionship. It's great. But there are also medical benefits. Having plants in your house has been known to lower people's blood pressure. There's been studies that have shown that they have 20 to 25% decrease in headaches, and then a decrease in post-operative pain. And this is when there's live plants that are in hospitals. Plants have also been able to remove volatile organic compounds. That's VOCs. And that's things that are things that are made with chemicals, things like paint, certain varnishes, things like that. Those are going to release these volatile organic compounds out into your air in your house. And plants can pull that because they're breathing too. They're going to pull that air out. They're going to pull the CO2 and they're going to put fresh oxygen into your thing. So having plants in your house will increase your fresh oxygen levels in your house. It's amazing. Plants are great. So those are kind of some of the benefits, because I think sometimes with house plants, it seems more like a chore, right? You're like, why would I want to have something that's just going to be in my house that I have to remember to water, remember to take care of? But really, you're going to be getting something back too from having the plants in there. And like I said, plants do require a little bit, but I've got a little cheat sheet here for, and like I said, I'm going to post this. This will be on the slides that you can see afterwards, but I'm going to post this, send it to Laura, and it'll be available to you. But plants need pretty much the same things that humans need: light, sunlight, water, correct temperature, so the proper shelter. And then they also kind of need a relative humidity. So plants, just like humans, they're going to have a certain set of things that they're requiring. They're going to need nutrients. They're going to need water. They're going to need sunlight. Humans, we need sunlight. You and ask anybody about what their mental health is like during winter. We need fresh, bright sunlight to kind of maintain a good mental health. So do plants. But then, depending on the plant, they're going to strive better with certain humidity levels, certain watering levels, certain temperatures, and certain light levels. And when we're looking at light, I'll just kind of walk you through this cheat sheet. This is going to be done in foot candles. And I have to look up what a foot candle is every single time I read it because I always forget. But a foot candle is from one, oh my gosh, I'm going to get it wrong. It's like 1 foot candle would be 1 foot away. It would put 1 square foot of light onto a surface. So 1 candle from 1 foot away would put 1 square foot onto the wall. So over 200 foot candles to not direct sun would be high light. Sunny would be at least 4 hours of direct sun. Medium light, 75 foot candles to 200 foot candles, and low light would be 25 to 75 foot candles. Well, we'll talk a little bit about how you get light inside your house or how you control that, because that's a tricky thing to think about when you're thinking about, oh, well, my plants are inside, so they're only getting light bulb light. But we all have windows in our house, or most of us do. And so there's going to be certain areas in your house that'll have better light than others. And there's also certain light bulbs you can use if you need better lighting as well. Temperature wise, plants are going to be kind of like humans. They don't want to be super cold and they don't want to be super hot. Now, there are plants, like cactuses or desert plants that do well with higher temperatures, but the majority are going to be doing well with this average temperature. And if you look, 65 degrees to 75 degrees is our average house temperature. There are people that keep their houses colder than that, and there are people that keep their houses hotter than that. But this 65 to 75 degree range is going to make plants really happy. And there are going to be certain plants that want very specific settings. There's desert plants that like it to get really cool at night and then hot during the day. You can't always adjust the conditions to every single specific plant. So you're just going to have to find something that's a happy medium for everything. Relative humidity is going to be the percentage of water that you have in your air. So how much absorption your air has. Everyone notices, during the winter things get pretty staticky, or their skin gets drier inside their house because we're running our furnaces a lot. So that's going to mean that our relative humidity specifically in winter, but in your house, is pretty low. If you're constantly getting, friction shocks or shocks when you're touching things inside your house, that's going to mean that you have really dry air most likely. And so that maybe isn't great for your plants, but I'll teach you some things that you can do to kind of change the relative humidity specifically for your plant. And then watering. I think a lot of times what we as plant owners worry about is, am I watering enough? How am I watering too much? How much water should I water? And we'll talk a little bit about that. But there's some levels. Some plants, you want the soil to be wet all the time or moist all the time, not standing water, but wet to the touch all the time. Some plants will just want the surface of the soil to be wet, so that's 1 to 2 inches down, and then have that dry out before rewatering. And then there's other plants, let's think about cactuses and that, or succulents. Soil can be a mix of moderately dry. It can become moderately dry before rewatering. All right, so we talked a little bit about light. Here's an example of kind of how light comes into your house. So especially, folks that are going to be trying to put their plants near windows, you're going to need to kind of pay attention to how that sun and how that plant is positioned so that it can make the most of the sun depending on the type of year. the light levels of the location are super important. Light situation is going to refer to the natural full sunlight. So through windows, patio door skylights, but full direct summer sun could cause scorching. So you want to kind of think about that when you're thinking about where your plant is going to be. Winter, you want to, it's going to be a little less direct. So you're going to want to think about if you need to move your plant in the winter. And then dark locations are going to, be shady places within the house, set back away from windows, and have a shadow from a certain piece of furniture or something that's going to cause. So those are all kind of things that you want to think about when you're thinking about where to put your plant. Windows with southern exposure, so facing the south, are going to give the largest variation of light. So that's going to give you the best chance of having a large amount of light coming in to your plant. And then windows with northern exposure are going to provide the least light. And you can often tell where you can tell if they're which side of your house. I mean, obviously, if you are a person that knows the directions, that's great. But my north side of my house constantly has like algae growing on it because it doesn't get that direct sunlight to kill it off. So that's kind of always a helpful thing to look around, look at what your shade levels are outside your house if you're a person that has a hard time knowing north, south, east, and west. How to tell if your plant does not get enough light. Your plant's not going to grow. It's not going to grow that well. Plants grow by photosynthesis. They're going to take the sun's light and turn it into energy. And how do you know if it doesn't grow? If you're looking at it and you're like, I mean, it looks small, but the internodes, which is the spaces between the leaves, are going to be small. The spaces between your new leaves are going to be small because your plant has not grown a large space before it has it leaves out again. So that's going to be a good area. Or the new leaves are a lot smaller than the old leaves. If it does get new leaves, they're going to be tinier than the old ones. The leaf color is a lighter green on new foliage than on older foliage, or the older leaves have started to die off. So those are all kind of good tips on how to tell if it doesn't get enough light. Here's a picture right here about these plants are starting to kind of wilt. You can see they've got some light green, these darker ones along the base. These older leaves are darker green than these top ones. They're starting to shrivel up at the edges. So that's going to be a great way to tell if your plant is not getting enough light. Like I said before, temperature. People temperature is a great level for plant temperature. If you're comfortable in your house temperature wise, your plant is going to be comfortable in your house. Photosynthesis, so like how a plant is converting sunlight to energy, that's going to be directly related to what the temperature is. The room temperature, like I said, it can vary from season to season. So plants are used to that as well. Plants are used to having a dormant season. So you don't always have to worry too much about it, but it's important to know kind of what the temperature is in your house at the daytime versus the nighttime. Plants left in the sun, in sunrooms over the winter, they can get cold and too cold, and they will skip that dormancy phase and they'll go right into dying. So you just want to make sure that you're kind of keeping a nice consistent temperature. If you are going to ease a plant into dormancy, you want to do that gradually. You don't want to just, or vice versa, ease it out of dormancy. You don't want to just throw it outside dramatically. You want to start to bring it out slowly, for a couple hours, and lengthen that time over and over again if you are spacing out. So on the other side about being too cold, being too hot, if you have a plant that is in too much direct sunlight, it can get too hot. And when it gets too hot, it's going to start to dehydrate, just like humans. When we get too hot, we're going to start to lose sweat. We're going to start to overheat. Plants can do the same thing. more heat means more photosynthesis, but the more photosynthesis you have, the more water you need, the more nutrients you're going to need. So the more active a plant is, the more it's going to need from you. So you want to keep it right there at that 70 to 80 degree temperature during the day and that 65 to 70 degree temperature at night. If you can keep it 70 all the time, great. You know what I mean? It's going to be nice and moderate. Plant will be able to be comfortable and secure because it won't have to kind of manage itself to plan for changes. Um, Relative humidity. We talked a little bit about this. When it gets, winter, it starts to dry out, but higher humidity, the more water you have in your air, the less water the plant is going to lose because your air, if your air is at a higher humidity than your soil, it won't take anything from that soil. You can look at it in this picture. You've got a 10% humidity here in this atmosphere, and this plant is going to be sending that air is going to suck the water from that plant to maintain a more neutral humidity. It's going to pull it from there. Same thing you can see here. This is 70 degrees all over here. If this is at the relative humidity is at 50%, it's going to be losing less temperature over here. Now here we've got a temperature outside. I would hope it's outside. If it's 90 degrees in your house, you got to check your thermostat, but it's 90 degrees in the air. The relative humidity is still 50%, but it's so hot that plant is losing its water. So you keep that relative humidity the same, you lower the temperature, you can see it's losing less water. So it's going to kind of be correlated with the temperature, but if it's a lower humidity in the air, that air is going to pull water from your soil, from your leaves, all sorts of different things. So you are going to have to continually water in order to maintain the right water level for your plant. So medium humidity, and there's different ways of measuring this. A lot of your thermostats are going to have a humidistat built right into it. So that's going to be a part of your thermostat that measures the humidity of the air. And you can set that depending on what kind of furnace you have. You can set that a specific way. So that's something to look into on your thermostat. Mine doesn't because I don't have a humidistat in my furnace. But, just check and see because every furnace and every thermostat is different. Down here, I have a note about microclimates, and that is, and I'm going to turn on my video because I'm going to show you what a microclimate could be. Here I have a ponytail palm, and if I wanted to, you can see a ponytail palm. It's got, ponytail palm, and it looks like it has a ponytail. And this is a really dramatic, pretty plant because it has this really cool base, really wide base. It doesn't need a lot of soil. It's really neat. Anyway, getting off topic. If I wanted to create a microclimate for this, that microclimate is going to be a way to maintain the humidity around a specific plant, around a specific area. So I'm going to create a little tiny climate right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a dish like this, or even a wider one, and I'm going to fill it with rocks. And that's where I'm going to put my water. I'm going to put these rocks in there. I'm going to set the ponytail palm right on top of the rocks, and I'm going to put a pool of water in with those rocks. And that is going to create this little humidity zone only for that plant. It's not for my whole house. It's just going to be for that plant. And then I'm going to add the water. When I water my plants, I'm going to make sure that I'm also watering my microclimate. So it's just it's a different technique, but it's a way to create a humid area right around that specific plant. Another idea is to use a mister when you're watering your plant. This would be in conjunction with making sure this isn't going to be the only way that you're going to water it, because you want to make sure that some of that is getting down to the soil, but you can mist all your house plants with a spray bottle. And this is a good way to also kind of help with your dust. It's going to help get the dust off of your plants and stuff like that too. So you mist your top leaves, and that's going to help create these little humid barriers around your leaves. But again, you still want to be checking to make sure your soil has enough water as well. You can also use shallow containers to kind of help create a little humid area around it as well. Water requirements. I would say this is the number one question that I get about plants. It's Am I watering enough? How much do I need to water? Am I watering it too much? And it's really going to, unfortunately, there's no one way, one answer for all your plants. Again, house plants especially, they don't have that deep reservoir of the earth like plants in your landscaping does do. I'm not sure. You're outside, you're planting plants down in the ground, so it's going to be have a little less variation of where the water, that's going to be pulling the plant has the opportunity to sink its roots down really deep and pull water from the soil. A house plant's going to be limited by how much water it can pull up from the soil. But different plants are going to be different. A lot of us think about succulents and about how great they are because they don't require a ton of water because they hold it in their leaves, things like that. Cactuses are similar. Um, but depending on the plant, it might have higher water requirements or it might be more active. Again, it's going to be what the temperature is in your house, what the humidity is in your house. So a good rule of thumb and literal thumb is, I'm going to put my video on again, is when you're looking, this is a mother-in-law's tongue. I don't know this, that scientific name is like Dracana something. But when I'm getting ready to water my plants, I'm going to stick my finger into the soil. I'm going to try to sink it down an inch to 2 inches down in that soil. If that soil is dry, you need to water your plants. Okay. If it's a little bit moist, you could probably wait a day. But if it is, moist, you don't need to water it. And moist would be that you put your finger in there, you test it out, and it's getting some soil stuck to it. That means that there's water that's helping stick to it. You can feel the wetness in the soil. So when you're looking at your plant, you're going to actually stick your finger in the soil. And unfortunately, there's not a really other, besides hands-on and trying it out and feeling it, there's no perfect formula. You can have some guidelines. You can say, once you start doing it a lot, you'll say, oh, that one, every 2 weeks, is usually, or every week, or 3 times a week, depending on what the temperature is and everything like that. But you'll get the system as you have plants longer. But it's going to be affected by so many things. Container size, the larger a container, the more water is going to be taken up by soil, depending on that plant. So, or the more the soil is going to take up a lot of your water. So you want to be making sure to check what your soil is like. Check it every couple of days when you first get a plant. It's going to help you develop a pattern. One thing that I learned is that you can get an app too. You can put in your house plant. You can put in what kind of plant it is. You can put in the temperature in your house. You can put in a couple of different things, and it's going to help you remember to water your plants. So if you're a person that likes apps, likes technology, that's something that you can try to use to help you remember. But container volume is definitely going to affect it. Light intensity, we talked about that. Light coming in from outside, how hot it is, the soil moisture, what your soil is made of, and kind of the retention value of it, how it retains water, and then what plant type. Because again, certain plants are going to need more water than others, or more frequent water. Nutrient requirements. So soil, it doesn't necessarily have to be name brand or anything like that, but good quality just means what's in it. It doesn't have a lot of filler, things like that. It's going to have some organic material. It's going to have something to help drainage, things like that. The plant type is going to definitely determine what type of fertilizers or things like that you might want to add over time. And then the volume of soil. So the more soil you have, the more nutrients you're going to have to add over time, because it's just going to disperse those nutrients throughout all that soil. So if you have a huge pot with a tiny plant in it, it's definitely going to suck up more of your nutrients into that soil, and not as many are going to go to the plant. So think about that as well. The light intensity, again, here we are talking about that same thing, dang it. The higher the lights, the more nutrients are going to potentially come out through the leaves. So you have to think about that as well. You want to make sure that you're paying attention. And the plant will tell you. You can look at this plant in the picture. It's starting to brown. It's starting to have some definite problems. So that would be a time to kind of look up what the plant is, because each plant's going to have different needs. And sometimes they'll just be general house plant fertilizers. Sometimes it'll be succulents. But if you just kind of look up what the plant is, it'll have a recommendation for what kind of fertilizer it would be. Oh, look, there's a ponytail palm. Um, the soil requirements, what kind of soil to use. I have here, I don't know if anyone's an Ina garden person, but if you don't have homemade, store-bought is fine. A lot of people will make their own houseplant soil, just because then they know what's in it. There's certain people they only like to use peat moss. They only like to use coconut coir, which is that brown film, fibrous material on the outside of coconuts. Some people like to use their homemade compost. It just really depends, but soil is going to provide a bunch of different things to your plant. It's going to provide anchorage, the thing that holds it up in the air, helps it maintain upright, stay upright. It's going to help retain water. A lot of times, with house plants, overwatering is a big issue. So you're going to want soil that drains well. So a lot of times you'll have those little white kind of styrofoam looking things, that's perlite. Um, Other people use that coconut coir or things like that instead, or sand. Just depends on the mix. It'll provide minerals, so that's gonna, minerals in your nutrients. It's gonna be that's gonna be what that comes from the compost or the woody material that's in there. That's gonna break down over time. That's gonna be the nutrients that your plant is living on, and then the right pH range. Depending on what the materials are made of, it's going to change your acidity level. So the lower that number, the more acid the range. And I have read some more research that says really this should be skewed more towards the 6 to 7 range and be less acidic. It's going to depend on the plant, but for most beginner houseplant people, first timers, going to the store and getting a houseplant mix is going to be fine. You're going to do just fine. If you start to get really out there and have some specialty plants, that's when you're going to want to start looking at what the mixes are made of. If you want to add anything, or, if you want to make sure you avoid perlite. Some people are anti-perlite people because of the way that it's made. It's not a renewable resource like coconut coir. So it's really just depending on you. But if you're a beginner, just using a store-bought mix is going to be just fine for you. Pests and diseases. This is going to be really dependent on what your plant is, what it is, where it's from, where you purchased it, things like that. But this is kind of a general rule, and this is going to be in that handout that I sent to Laura. If it has spots, soft spots, or wilts, chances are that your pest is going to be bacterial. If it's got mottling, distortion, or dwarfing would mean a small leaf. Chances are that plant has a virus of some kind. If it's got something like a sooty mold, which is like a black fuzzy kind of thing, if it's got rot at the base of the leaf, if it's got rusts, mildews, which is like a white filminess, spots that are literal spots, cankers, which could be, different problems there, or if it has specific wilts, chances are it could be fungal, but that's a lot of different choices. And it's going to be really dependent on your plant. The best method is to make sure you're buying healthy plants. So when you're going to even just Home Depot, take a look at your plants. You want all of your plants to be a similar healthy green color if that's their intended color. Obviously, if you have a variegation or plants that are multiple colors, it's going to be a little different. Make sure that all your leaves, your healthy leaves, are not flopping over. You don't have any of these signs on them right at the store, because it's really hard to get rid of some of these problems once you have them. So make sure you're checking them. Look at the undersides of the leaves for pests, things like that. So just make sure, but they tend to need 3 factors to be present. A susceptible plant, so that's a plant that, some things won't get rot. Some plants won't get rot. So if you have if there's a rot, something that causes rot and it's not meeting its host plant, it's not going to take host on that plant. A viable pathogen and a favorable environment. So a viable pathogen is going to be the entrance, the way that it gets into the plant. And then a favorable environment is going to be the right environment for that disease to grow. Stress is a beginning of the pathogen problem for plants. So if you have low light, or you're overwatering, or you're underwatering, that plant's going to be stressed and it can't focus on fighting off a disease because it's so worried about staying alive. So keep that kind of in mind. A happy plant is going to have a better chance of fighting off a disease. Container selection. This is going to be a little, with our house plants. So we want them to be pretty. I'm going to kind of turn my camera on and go over what I've got here. You basically have two, we can start with a big category. We'll do drainage holes or no drainage holes. I have a pot of each kind here. This one has drainage holes, and I would say that this is my recommendation just because it's going to be easier. Let's see if I can do this without uprooting this plant. It's a drainage hole is just going to be a hole that's drilled in the bottom of your thing, but it's going to be an easier way to make sure you're not overwatering that plant. But one thing that goes along with that is that if you're watering a plant, the excess water is going to come out the bottom of that hole. So you're going to want a plastic tray that's going to go on the bottom. And I had a spare plastic tray here somewhere, but of course it's gone now. But a plastic tray, this one's really dirty and gross, but you can buy these for like 50 cents, 99 cents, and you can get a whole bunch of them. And then you can just set your plant on top of that. And that way all the excess water is going to go down there and it'll help create that microclimate. This right here is an example of a non-drained pot. You can see it does not have a hole in the bottom. Those are just little feet to go on it. But it is ceramic. So the thing about ceramic pots, if they're not sealed all the way around, that water can leach out the bottom. So that's going to be the excess water will leach out, which means whatever surface it's on, the water stain is going to go onto that surface. So keep that in mind. But there are some that aren't ceramic and don't have any holes drilled in the bottom. And those are going to be kind of hard to maintain that water because once you water it, all that water is going to just sit right in that plant. And when you overwater, the things that could happen are things like root rot or, things like that, where your roots can't be healthy and your plant can't stay upright and strong and things like that without good healthy roots. So I think that's your number one thing you're going to want to look at when you're thinking about a new container. You want it to complement your plant's growth. If you have a slow growing plant, picking a pot that fits that plant pretty well, or it doesn't have a ton of extra space, is probably okay. You don't need to have a giant plant or a giant pot for a slow growing plant when you're thinking about what to put it in. If it's a fast growing plant, you want a pot if you repot it, you're going to want a pot that has lots of extra space so that you don't have to do it again, because every time you repot a plant, it's stressing it out. It's a new habitat. You're completely uprooting it, literally, and putting it in a new place. So you want to think about that. Pots come in a variety of materials, everything from like 99-cent plastic ones to really fancy $100 ceramic. There's made of recycled materials. There's metal, really just about anything. But it's just about what you kind of want. But the drainage holes are definitely going to be really important to think about, both for your house and for your plants. Sorry, I wanted to make sure, I wanted to look at my notes, make sure I didn't have any other notes about that. When you think about whether your plant is in the right sized pot, you can kind of think about how you've seen it over time. If it's got lots of, you can lift it up, you can see if its roots are kind of pushed in all around the outside. If it's got lots of air, extra soil space around the edge, certain things like that mother-in-law's tongue can really fill a pot because they grow vertically and they don't have tons and tons and tons of roots. So that's something to think about, but it just really depends on the plant. But appearance is going to kind of maybe make more, if your plant starts to get crowded, it's going to start to wilt. So, and it's also going to be too big for the pot that it's in. So it's going to kind of look bad, and it's also going to feel bad. When to prune, this is going to affect what container you're in, but it's also going to affect the plant. So if you want to maintain a specific size, you're going to want to make sure that you're pruning fairly often, making sure that any new shoots that are on that plant, you're pinching them off. And I'm going to turn my camera on because pinching is very specific. It's literally just taking that plant leaf bud and pinching it and pulling it off. You would do this with basil. You would pull the little leaf buds off with basil. This is a very slow growing ponytail palm, so I don't have any little buds to show you right now, but so you want to make sure that you're removing any leaf buds if you want to maintain a specific shape or you like that plant the way it's at. And then when to clean. Cleanliness, houseplants get dusty because there's not a lot of wind, there's not a lot of natural rain to clean it off. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that dust, because when you have dust and dirt and extra materials that build up on the outside of your plant, it can cause those leaves to decay. So you want to make sure that you're kind of dusting them frequently. And then if you really need to, kind of wiping off the leaves, if it's that kind of leaf, spraying them with a spray bottle and really, really getting it nice and soaking so that it can kind of wash some of that dust away. But I guess basically moral of the story is, when you're selecting a container and you're looking at your plant, if your plant has been growing well, it will likely need to be repotted. It should be, if it's looking top heavy and it looks like that's a really big plant for a really tiny pot, it's probably ready for a new container. Or the container is full of little new plant shoots, or if it's got extensive root growth, that's going to be the kind of thing that makes you figure it out. Plants should usually be potted in 1-inch increments, and that's going to be the diameter of the top. So when you think about where, how big your pot is, the next inch bigger is going to be where you want to go. I think sometimes people try to kind of get more bang for their buck by going up a bigger size, but that's going to be a waste of water and nutrients and harder for the plant to maintain. Okay, so now we're closing in on it, folks. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're feeling like this is a long program, it's okay. We're getting close to the end here. What plants should you choose? And when you're looking at a plant, so I'm finding my notes here because evidently I flipped them all over. When you're looking for plants, there's just so much choice. There are so many things to choose from. But how do you pick a good plant? You're going to pick one based on what you like, right? You're going to pick one that you like the looks of. But if you want to look for a healthy plant, you're going to look at the leaves. Like we talked about earlier, you're going to make sure that you are looking at a plant that all the leaves are kind of looking a similar way. You know what I mean? If you're a newbie and you don't know a ton, most plants, if they're healthy, all their leaves are going to look similar in color, similar in size, similar in shape. So if you're looking at a plant at the grocery store even, and some of its leaves are a little bit small or uneven, or they're yellow in some spots, or they've got some that are just completely brown, that's not going to be a healthy plant for you. And we want you to start off on a good foot. You can pull that plant out and look at its roots. I would encourage anybody who's buying a plant, or especially if they're investing in a plant, paying a decent amount of money, you kind of pull that plant out out of its roots. If it's got tons and tons and tons of roots all spread throughout that pot, it is root bound. It is choking itself in there. So it might still be okay. And if you repot it and put in a new thing, but it's going to be a big shock for it. So it could go through a little growing pain stage. The other thing to look for with your roots is what they look like and what they smell like. If you're looking in there, they shouldn't look like they're falling apart. They shouldn't look like they're a dark, dark, dark color that is, kind of wet or squishy. That's going to mean that it's starting to break down. They'll also smell. Roots that are rotting are gonna smell like rotting leaves or rotting wood, because that's exactly what's happening. So you can kind of pay attention to those kinds of things when you're trying to figure out if this is a good plant to buy. And then when you get it home, it's going to take a while for it to get acclimatized. It could take up to a couple weeks for it to figure out this is a new, just like all of us, when we move, it's tough. You got to take a while to get used to the new air, the new sun, the new watering schedule. So it's definitely going to be a little bit before your plant looks perfect and beautiful all over again. This is a little bit about acclimatization. Especially if you're repotting and when you bring it home, it's going to change its nutrient levels. You might have a reduction in water, or you might have an increase in water. And then when your lighting might be different than it is at the store, or if it's a house plant that you purchase from an outdoor nursery that then you bring it inside, that's going to be a complete change because it's going to have more artificial light. These are going to be some good beginning plants. And these recommendations came from the Royal, what is it called? It's like the Royal Horticulture Society, basically. But these are going to be plants that would be good investments for a new person. And these are going to be things that plants that are widely recommended by different organizations as potentially good choices for people who are just starting out. There we go. There's my rest of my list. The this one right here, which is String of Hearts. This is going to be a kind of you can see it's falling over the cascading. If you've got a spot in your house that you want to have a hanging plant, this would be a great choice. It's going to be like a lot of plants. These are going to have similar requirements, west or south facing windows, because they would have better light. During the winter, you want to kind of maintain the temperature. So that might mean moving it away from a window because it's going to be cold right there by that window. So you want to maintain this 60 kind of degree temperature at minimum. This is a succulent plant. So it's going to require lots of drainage, lots of well-drained soil. It does not require a lot of fertilization, which is, again, why it's a great plant for newbies, and it's not going to require a lot of repotting. So keep that in mind. And then look at these cool flowers. I think those are really neat. This is going to be like the #1 recommended jade or succulent plant. And this is Jade Plant. You can find these all over the place. It's easy to grow, grows well with restricted root space. So in small containers, which means that it probably doesn't need to be repotted very often. It does benefit from pruning so that it keeps them nice and compact because it can grow vigorously. So kind of keep that in mind, but they're easy to pinch off and trim. They require well-drained soil. So that's going to be something that has a lot of sand levels or a lot of perlite or things like that. It's going to do well with warm, dry conditions, which is why it makes a great house plant. And it tolerates neglect, which as a person who's just starting out, look for that sentence right there, because new plant owners it's hard to figure out the system and figure out the routine. So those are, I guess, would be my top 2 recommendations if you're looking for a house plant to just start out. Again, we talked a little bit about the benefits of plants, but other than that, that's basically kind of where we're at with plants. So if you are looking for a couple of plants to kind of get you started, you can find both of these plants pretty widely available at I feel like Home Depot always has a really good, or I guess a really diverse succulent section. So if you have, if you go to Home Depot for your plants, things like that, you can definitely check there. They have a lot of different house plants that we have gotten off and on over the years. But if anyone has any questions, you can either, take your mic off of mute or, type something in the chat and we can go over some of those.
Great. Natalie, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great. So I did have some questions that came in for some people who were unable to make the program this evening that I thought maybe we could talk about tonight.
Definitely.
Do you have any recommendations for replanting and maintaining orchids?
Oh boy, that's top level stuff right there. We do have tons of houseplants in our house. We do not do orchids. And a little bit is because they are very temperamental. So my best suggestion, especially during COVID, there's gotta be a virtual program out there. And I can try to do a little digging and send you some suggestions, Laura, if there's anybody, or send you some info online. I could just email it to you. But that's going to be something that is going to be for an experienced orchid person because they are temperamental.
Okay. So for the person who was interested in orchids, I will get some information out to you from Natalie later.
Yes.
And another question that came in, is it normal for indoor plants to lose more leaves during the winter time?
It definitely could happen, especially like I mentioned earlier in the program. If they're right by a window because you're trying to get that light, that temperature is going to drop dramatically in the winter. Even if you have good windows on your house, you're still going to get some temperature change. So, yes, it is normal because some plants do go through a natural dormancy during lower temperatures, but you could just give that plant a little extra space away from the window to try to help that temperature. You can even put, a thermometer, like a kitchen thermometer there for an hour or so to try to see what the sitting temperature is. But definitely, if you are having that problem and your plant is by a window, it's going to be a couple of things. It's you're not getting as much direct sun because the angle of the sun is different than it is the rest of the time of the year, or it's getting too cold. There's another thing that could potentially be, if you don't have a humidistat in your house, something that's keeping your humidity at a regular level, is that it might need more frequent watering because your air is pulling out more water from the plant because it's so humid, or it's the lack of humidity in your house. So I guess check those kinds of couple things. It is natural for plants to go through a dormancy, but you can do some things to help your plant if it is going through some winter struggles, like we all are.
And then this last question from a person who couldn't make it tonight. Do you recommend plant food or plant food spikes for indoor plants?
It's definitely you're going to want to buy specific indoor plant fertilizer, because if there are indoor plant spikes, I wouldn't use the same ones you're using outside, just because that's going to be dispersed in a different way. Plant spikes that go outside are going to disperse with the hose watering that you're using, which is a completely different kind of watering than you're going to be doing inside. So there are some types of, I guess they would be like sedimentary almost, fertilizers, but a lot of times the fertilizer that you're going to get is specifically for house plants, because the way that the plant is absorbing that fertilizer is going to be different. So unfortunately, it's hard to get like an all-purpose one for outside and inside plants, and you might be tempted to just like use it. You might have mixed results and it could work great, but my recommendation would definitely be to get one that's specific for indoor plants.
Thank you for answering those questions, Natalie, from our people who couldn't make it tonight.
No problem. So I guess that's all I have for tonight. I did have a couple other, I was having some trouble finding my note about my other plant recommendations, but I did find it. If you were wondering what all the rustling was in the background, it was me feverishly flipping through my notes. But I did have a couple other recommendations that would be like, if you wanted to give somebody a house plant as a present, but you're like, I don't know. One of the best ones that is most recommended by the Royal Horticultural Society is the peace lily, which is going to be, very widely available. They're basically everywhere. The easy care succulent was the jade plant we talked about. The best year-round flowers, which is a plant that's going to be continually flowering indoor throughout the year, would be the Cape Primrose, but be a little temperamental. It's going to be more focused on flowering and not as focused on ease of care. And then the best winter color, if you're looking for something that's going to bloom in the winter, it would be a Christmas cactus. And I'm sure have seen those a lot. They're going to bloom at the exact same time every year, which is kind of neat. A lot of times people have them, they're specifically meant to bloom on Christmas or right around Christmas as like a special surprise. So that is all for me though, Laura.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. We really appreciate you taking your time this evening to create this presentation for us. If anybody does have any additional questions regarding tonight's presentation, or if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, you are welcome to email me at adultprograms@reddicklibrary.org, and I will get some information to you. But otherwise, thank you so much, Natalie. And we really enjoyed it tonight. We've gotten some messages in the chat box thanking you and talking about how great it was.
Oh, thank you guys. And I'll look forward to seeing people in the future. Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
I do have a question for Natalie.
Yeah.
Actually, I have two. First off, I have a grow light bar that we've kind of set up from my ceiling, but I know from what I've read, it says 6 to 12 inches. Most of my plants are about 14 inches. I can't really get them that much higher. Is that helping, or is it kind of defeating the purpose?
I'm sorry, your plants are 14 inches tall, or your plants are 14 inches away?
They're away.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely going to provide something, but obviously it's the farther away you get, the less UV light rays are going to get to that plant. So just like when you have really, really shallow light in the winter. What is that called? Where it's called like weak, there it is, weak sunlight in the winter. It's going to be a very similar situation. So a suggestion would maybe be if you have an old book or something like that, that you could put underneath it, or, you know, something like that would work fairly well to get it up a little bit higher. But any light is better than no light. You know what I mean? So it's going to be getting some sort of benefit, just not, it's going to not get as much as it could from 6 to 12 inches away.
Okay. How close should I have it to the grow light?
I mean, it would definitely depend on the grow light and what the wattage of the bulbs were. So if your recommendation, if you have a package on the outside of your bulb, you know, your light that you have, it would give you a recommendation for sure.
Okay.
I would say, you know, no closer than 6 inches for sure. It's going to get singed. You know what I mean? But I would say 12 inches would be fine, you know, so you shouldn't have to do too much work.
Okay.
But definitely if you still have the original packaging, or you can look up a model number from that thing, it would probably have a recommendation based on the wattage of your bulb.
Okay. And then my other question, I've been having some trouble with a rattlesnake plant. I read that they needed a lot of humidity, so I have a humidifier by it, and I put the little rocks in the water around next to it, and it's still kind of browning on the edges. I started using distilled water because someone told me to use that, but it just doesn't seem to be helping it at all. I'm really not sure what else to do with it. I had considered trying to put like a bag around it to make like a
a very, very humid area in it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just pulling up a resource now while we're talking. Any ones that are brown, you know, you want to get those out. You want to kind of clean it up. Make sure that your plant is nice and clean. If it gets dusty, that could be part of the problem, because it can't breathe. Because if you know, all leaves have little tiny mouths on them. That's where they're going to take in their air, give off their air. That's where they're going to get, you know, leach out their water when they're too moist. So make sure that it's nice and clean. You can wipe it down, even if like with a diluted rubbing alcohol, that would be fine. But your soil needs to be consistently moist, which is obviously what you're trying to do, and you're doing right there. You want to make sure that top 1 to 2 inches is nice and moist. That's definitely doing it. But I'm trying to just see if there's any troubleshooting there. But I would guess, how long have you had it?
I bought it probably about last April, and it was pretty full, and now I'm down to about 4 leaves.
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah.
Always the last ditch effort for any plant, especially house plants, is going to be to completely repot, completely change out the soil, and put it in a new pot. So that's always the last ditch effort. If you're like, I've tried literally everything else, it would be getting a different type of pot, like a bigger, maybe an inch bigger, and repotting it with some fresh soil. Have you tried to fertilize it at all?
Yes.
Okay. So, and it might just be that it's like too many things, you know what I mean? So that would be the last ditch effort I would try, because it's going to be this big shock, right? It's going to be completely uprooting your plant and putting in a new thing. But I would try cleaning the leaves first, getting it nice and dust free, making sure there's nothing on the outside of those leaves. Bloomscape is a really good resource for house plants. They're a commercial one. There's plenty of non-commercial ones out there, but they have some really easy to read guides. And they would be a good guide on how to clean your plant, clean the leaves of it if you want, and how to prune them too. Obviously you don't want to prune away any more leaves, because you only have 4 left. Leave those leaves where they are. So I guess that would be my recommendation without seeing it, but good luck, and I hope they make it. Every plant deserves a good chance, you know?
Thank you.
You bet.
Are there any other questions? All right, nothing's coming in on the chat. So great. Thank you so much, Natalie. And please look for this video on YouTube.
All right. Have a good rest of your night, everybody.